Pleasure.
That does it for today's Washington Journal. We'll bring you now to the House, where they're going to be finishing up their work on 2012 spending bills for military construction and Veterans Affairs, and then they'll start working on that agriculture appropriations bill. Thanks for watching.
House be in order. Chair leaves before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., June 14, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Daniel Webster to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair now recognizes members from a list submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties of with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority leader and the minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes. But in no event shall the debate go beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we are starting the most important debate of 2012 in Congress, the reauthorization of the Farm Bill. Now, it's true that we are just talking about the Ag Appropriations Bill, and much of the reform agenda will be difficult or ruled out of order due to the restrictive approach of the rules, although in the past, some of my Republican leadership friends have had no compunction about legislating on appropriations bills. But here, we will be protecting large agribusiness instead of American farmers, ranchers, consumers, and the environment. This debate matters. Each point that is made on the floor or in the media, each vote that is accumulated against the status quo and towards change and fairness is another step towards reforming the one area that almost every independent analyst agrees is ripe for reform. From the far right to the far left, people agree it's time. American agricultural policy is frozen in time through the past collection of farm bills. It misallocates scarce dollars. It spends too much on the richest farming interests who really don't need it, and doesn't provide enough support for the majority of farmers and ranchers who do. It does not place a priority on the nutrition of our children, and it unleashes an assault on the environment. There must be a better way. There is a better way. Cutting back on unnecessary expenditures for the wealthy and the undeserving would make it possible to give a little more to the farmers and ranchers, the majority of whom don't get anything under the current Farm Bill. Now, most farmers and ranchers don't just want money. They would much rather have assistance to make them more competitive. There's far more that can be done providing for important research to strengthen the production of food. More can be done to market American agricultural products at home and abroad, to establish farmer markets. More can be done to protect farmers and their crops from disease and pests, and we can do so in a way that is consistent with our environmental values and our budgetary constraints. Farmers and ranchers as a group are some of the most outstanding stewards of the land and the environment we have in America. But we're looking now at a farm bill that is going to dramatically cut back the money to help them with environmental compliance, even requiring breaking some existing contracts. Well, complying with environmental regulations and changing policies is going to take some effort and in some cases going to cost money. Why aren't we protecting the environmental programs and providing technical assistance to help these agricultural interests do what they want to do, which will not only improve water quality, wildlife habitat, and the air quality, but will put money in their pockets, supporting small and medium-sized operations. Then there is the issue of nutrition. by skewing the production to artificially prop up and make profitable sugar, massive subsidies for corn, putting big money behind it, instead of improving the nutrition for our schools. For example, we are literally subsidizing a diet through our tax dollars that is making our kids sick. Instead, we should be helping them both be well-fed and healthy, not just well-fed with empty calories, with fruits and vegetables that will strengthen their bodies and the prospect for long-term health. But the people who grow food, like fruits and vegetables, are discriminated against under existing American farm policies. Farmers and ranchers grow food, protect the environment, strengthen the economy. It's a simple formula. It's hard to imagine a more pro-American agenda, and one that that Americans from all across the political spectrum agree with. It's time to listen to them, to work for them, and make it happen. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I serve as co-chairman of the Congressional Career and Technical Education Caucus with my friend and colleague Jim Langevin of Rhode Island. The Career and Technical Education Caucus is a group of members seeking to broaden awareness here on Capitol Hill on the importance of career and technical education. I take the floor today to offer yet another example of the critical role that career and technical education plays in helping individuals remain competitive in a constantly changing workforce environment. On June 7, 2011, history was made at the Central Pennsylvania Institute of Science and Technology. Two young ladies, Anna Krishak and Tricia Wright, graduated from their automotive technology program at the highest level possible offered by CPI. These non-traditional students in the automotive technology program earned their diploma along with state, national, and world certifications in their field of study. The most amazing part about their accomplishments was their path to success. Anna had only 1 year in the automotive technology program. She quickly earned the respect of her instructor, met the qualifications of CPI's School to Work cooperative education program, and became employed at a local car dealership just shortly after the school year began. Despite absences due to medical conditions, Tricia completed all her assignments and exceeded almost all other classmates. Tricia became eligible for CPI's cooperative education program and also later was employed at a local car dealership. In the process, both young ladies received college credit that can be transferred to many colleges and universities in the United States. In addition, both Anna and Tricia completed evening certification courses geared towards enhancing their education, which ensured a successful career path. Despite tough economic times, Tricia and Anna have found a way to make ends meet. They broadened their horizons and found their own competitive advantage in the marketplace despite an ever-changing economy. This story serves as a reminder for my fellow members, a reminder that career and technical education programs exist in every congressional district. And this also reminds us of how career and technical education can be utilized to assure a competitive and successful workforce. On behalf of the Career and Technical Education Caucus, I want to congratulate these outstanding young ladies for their achievements. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Woolsey, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's now mid-June, and we're just weeks away from the July date the President promised for a drawdown of American troops from Afghanistan. But so far, there appears to be little movement toward the kind of redeployment that the moment actually calls for and that the American people are insisting on. In fact, Mr. Speaker, Defense Secretary Gates, on his way out the door, endorsed a modest drawdown, even though the President has promised something significant. This is not a moment that calls for modesty. This is a moment for boldness and true leadership. This is a moment to break out of the war default posture, the posture that we've been in for going on to 10 years now. The longer this war goes on, the bloodier it becomes. We were told last year that fatalities would be unusually high in 2010 as the surge troops began penetrating the Taliban strongholds. But it turns out there's no sign that casualties are tapering off, and we're on pace for an equally deadly 2011. We lost more troops in March, April, and May of this year than we did during the same months of 2010. And let's not forget, because I don't think it's talked about nearly enough, that it's not just uniformed members of the U.S. military being put in harm's way by this conflict. The United Nations said over the weekend that there were more civilian casualties in May than in any single other month of this war. Needless to say, killing innocent people is certainly not the way to win the hearts and minds of another country. The American people's patience is wearing thin, Mr. Speaker, and there are many members of this body, a fair number of the Republican majority, who cannot support this Afghanistan policy either. I, for one, am tired of being told that the strategy is working and it just needs more time to succeed. How many military families will lose a father or a mother, or a son or a daughter, in the time it takes for this strategy to go nowhere? How many troops will be physically and psychologically damaged beyond repair? Mr. Speaker, I think nearly a decade, longer than any war in American history, is more than enough time to admit that this strategy does not work. We don't need simply a token drawdown. We need a fundamental change in policy and a complete reorientation of our thinking about national security. We need to finally end this war, and we need to bring our troops home. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I want to highlight a remarkable group of North Carolina students from Watauga High School in my district. These students recently competed and won 3rd place in the National Pro Start Invitational, Overland Park, Kansas, after winning 1st place in the Carolinas Pro Start competition earlier this year. They are to be congratulated for this fantastic achievement, and I commend everyone from the parents and students to the teachers and mentors involved in this innovative educational program. Pro Start is a nationwide 2-year program for high school students that seeks to develop the next generation of restaurant and food service industry leaders. Students participating in the program learn everything from culinary techniques to management skills via hands-on curriculum and real-world educational opportunities. By building practical professional skills, these students are investing in their future careers even while enrolled in high school. What's particularly impressive about this program is how it combines traditional high school programs with instruction from seasoned professionals in the food service and hospitality fields. This program is a wonderful model for how private sector companies can work with schools and students to offer tailor-made educational solutions that set students on the road to successful careers. In fact, in North Carolina alone, the Pro Start program has educated more than 700 students in 15 schools, with another 13 North Carolina schools set to join in the next year. Again, congratulations to everyone involved in Watauga High School's Pro Start program for excelling in this national program and making your community proud. Mr. Speaker, one of the joys of serving in Congress is the opportunity to be at celebrations such as the one I attended last week during our district work period. The enthusiasm in the room at their celebration was infectious. A special congratulations goes to the 4 winning students, Emily Haas, Michael Haynes, Justin Byram, and Eli Bradford. Of course, these accomplishments were facilitated by the support and hard work of Watauga High School Pro Start teacher Leanne Williams and Pro Start mentors Troy and Sandy Byram of Troy's Restaurant in Boone, David Gronwaller, with a Golden Corral executive and owner who sponsored the Pro Start team, Paul M. Stone, Alyssa Barkley, and Susan Say, who ran the statewide Pro Start program, also deserve congratulations for supporting this successful program that is already producing talented and enthusiastic North Carolina students. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, for 5 minutes.
Today, every American who fills up their gas tank is going to pay an extra 70 cents per gallon as a tribute to speculators on Wall Street. That's right, 70 cents a gallon is due to hedge fund speculation, derivatives, and commodity speculation on Wall Street. Didn't used to be this way. Before Enron, we prohibited this sort of speculation on Wall Street. There was a special law passed for Enron. Ken Boy, remember that? George Bush's favorite guy. Enron, bankrupt. Ken Boy lay, who knows where he is now. And, but the law still lives on. It was changed in Dodd-Frank to give new opportunities for the Commodities Future Trading Commission to begin to regulate speculation on Wall Street. But the Republicans are fighting tooth and nail against the regulation of speculation on Wall Street. Today we'll consider a bill that would deprive the Commodities Future Trading Commission, the watchdogs, of new computers. Republicans say we can't afford $60 million for computers at the Commodities Future Trading Commission to track a $400 trillion market, to track speculators that spent $25 billion on supercomputers last year so they could drive up the price of gasoline and manipulate markets without detection. Oh, we can't afford that. They've got your back, speculators. The Republicans are with you all the way. Every American who buys an airplane ticket today, who can still afford it, some, to take their family on vacation, you'll see a little surtax on fuel. That's another tribute to the speculators on Wall Street who've unnecessarily driven up the price of oil and gas. There is, at this point, a surplus of oil and gas in the world, more than we've seen for years. Production's up, demand's down, stockpiles are up, and the price is up. And guess what? The profits at the oil companies are up phenomenally, and the profits on Wall Street are obscene. Do the Republicans want to do anything about that? No. They would like to distract you. They don't want you to look at who's profiting from your pain and from destroying our economy. They're generous friends on Wall Street. They are oh so generous at election time to the Republican side of the aisle. The Republicans' friends in big oil, who are oh so generous to the Republicans at election time. It's not them. It's price is driven by supply and demand. If we drill more, drill here, drill now, that'll solve the problem. It won't solve the problem because the speculators are controlling the markets. If we could double U.S. oil supply tomorrow, they'd still be charging us 70 cents or more a gallon through unbridled speculation. We have an opportunity to rein that in. If we reject the Republicans' proposals today to take away computers and staff from the regulators, to prevent the reforms from going into place, to finally begin to close the Enron loophole created by Republicans and for Wall Street, we could almost immediately drive down the price of gasoline 70 cents a gallon. Nothing they're proposing will do that. What we're proposing will benefit American families today, the economy, put people back to work, and yeah, unfortunately, it will rein in some of the obscene profits at ExxonMobil and some of the obscene profits that Goldman Sachs and other speculators on Wall Street are making today. They might have to go out and make honest loans and earn an honest living instead of gambling. So it's a pretty clear choice. Who are you with? Are you with the speculators? Or are you with the American people?
Recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. National syndicated columnist Eugene Robertson recently wrote a piece titled, Afghan Strategy, Let's Go. It appeared in the June 11th Raleigh News and Observer. I would like to share some of Mr. Robertson's thoughts with the House. He began his column with this: slender threads of hope are nice, but do not constitute a plan, nor do they justify continuing to pour American lives and resources into the bottomless pit of Afghanistan. And he closed his columns with these words: "We wanted to kill or capture Osama bin Laden, and we did. Even so, say the hawks, we have to stay in Afghanistan because of the dangerous instability across the border in nuclear-armed Pakistan. But does anyone believe the war in Afghanistan has made Pakistan more stable?" Mr. Speaker, these are not my words again. These are the words of Eugene Robertson, who's nationally known and respected, and he is a liberal. He's not a conservative. But the point he's making is exactly right. How many more young men and women have to give their life for a corrupt leader? I would like to ask my colleagues on both sides to join Jim McGovern from Massachusetts. I am a co-sponsor of this bill. It's H.R. 1735, the Afghan Exit and Accountability Act. It gives a parameter to the President as to how we need to start bringing our troops out of Afghanistan before 2014 or 2015. I look at this young man's face, Mr. Speaker. His name is Tyler Jordan. His father was killed in Iraq. I look at him, and he represents all the children in America who are crying because their moms or dads are coming back dead. Many are coming back without arms and legs. So Tyler represents children in America who have their family loved ones over in Afghanistan. It's time to bring them home, Mr. Speaker. And then the other poster has a flag-draped coffin. They call it a transfer case. Coming into Dover Air Force Base. How many more families in this country have to look at the flag-draped coffin of their loved one? Mr. Speaker, that's why I hope both sides will join Mr. McGovern and myself in H.R. 1735, because Mr. Gates has already said we will be in Afghanistan until 2014 and 2015. That's what Eugene Robertson is saying. How many more have to die in the next 3 or 4 years for a corrupt leader named Karzai that we're paying $8 billion a month to, and we're cutting programs in America for children and senior citizens? Mr. Speaker, again, I want to make reference to Tyler Jordan and his pain. I want to make the flag-draped coffin and think how many moms and dads are having to be at the funeral home receiving the flag-draped coffin, and in many cases cannot even look at their loved ones because they were killed in a horrendous way. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope the American people will get behind 1735 and call their members of Congress and ask them to join us in bringing our troops home before 2014. Mr. Speaker, before I close, as I do all the time in my district and on the floor of the House, I will ask God to please bless our men and women in uniform. I will ask God to please bless the families of our men and women in uniform. I will ask God in His loving arms to hold the families who've given a child dying for freedom in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I will ask God to please bless the House and Senate that we will do what is right in the eyes of God for God's people here in America. And I will ask God to bless Mr. Obama, the President, that he will have the wisdom, the strength, and the courage to do what is right for the American people. And I will close by asking 3 times, God please, God please, God please continue to bless America. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Way to throw his voice. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. In March of 2006, then Senator Obama was on the Senate floor, and this is what he said. Quote, "The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership, and America deserves better," end quote. But now, Mr. Speaker, a few short years later, President Obama now takes the opposite approach, calling for an increase in the debt limit and threatening doom otherwise. President Obama has failed to send to Congress a budget that would realistically solve our nation's financial problems. He calls for plans that spend too much and borrows too much and taxes too much. When Congress reasonably rejected his plan and proposed a budget with responsible cuts, he turned to political rhetoric rather than meaningful discussions. So at a time when our nation must address a fiscal crisis, our President has offered no real solution and has politicized the issue. What we have today, more than ever before, is a sign of leadership failure. Back to his original speech when he was a senator. America deserves better. So today, with the debt ceiling already $5.3 trillion higher than the level President Obama objected to raising 5 years ago, he now asks us to raise it again for the 81st time since 1940. We all know this famous quote that defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. If we actually want to solve today's problem, we must depart from the insane 70-year tradition of just continuing to spend. If we do not delve into the real spending problems today, we will have this same debate a year later, 3, 5, 10 years later from now, and will again be urged to raise the debt limit or face a financial catastrophe. The United States government already owes more than $14 trillion. Less talked about is the federal government faces another $114 trillion in unfunded liabilities for Social Security and for Medicare. An estimate by the Congressional Budget Office reveals that by the year 2025, the government will spend 100% of every dollar in revenue on entitlements. And federal debt aside, state and local governments face a combined $3 trillion, coupled with their own unfunded liabilities in the forms of pensions. Forcing the government to live within its means is the only solution. Just as a family household does it when it reaches its spending limits, we must begin to closely scrutinize our bills and decide where there is unnecessary waste. When families seek to decrease their utility bills, they remember to turn off lights when they leave a room. We must begin doing this as well. Wasteful, fraudulent programs must be turned off, and long-term programs such as Medicare and Social Security must be addressed seriously today. Debt must be paid down instead of piled on. Although the President, the Senate leader, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury believe the worst thing that could happen to all of us is that we default on August 2nd, I believe that the worst thing that could happen for Congress to do is to fail to couple the increased debt limit without meaningful spending cuts. Once again, the private sector has affirmed this. On June 1st, 2011, 150 economists called for immediate spending cuts to help support job growth in a letter to Speaker John Boehner, which I would like to request unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, to have placed in the record.
Without objection.
The letter specifically says, quote, an increase in the national debt limit that is not accompanied by significant spending cuts and budget reforms to address our government spending addiction will harm private sector jobs creation in America. It is critical that any debt limit legislation enacted by Congress includes spending cuts and reforms that are greater than the accompanying increase in debt authority being granted to the President. If there's ever been a failure of leadership, it is today. We're broke, and the solution lies in reform rather than rhetoric, spending cuts rather than spending increases. Leadership has called for compromise in the next couple of weeks. A compromise does not involve a vote on raising the debt ceiling without these spending cuts. We demonstrated that on May 31st, when 97 to 318, the House rejected this measure. No Republican supported the vote then, and no Republican should support such a vote in August. Only after we curb the trillions of dollars of debt that we continue to pile up can we consider raising the debt limit.
Pursuant to Clause 12, Paren A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
When members return, they'll finish work